Guilford County students have been remote learning for the past several weeks, and there is already talk about them returning to the classroom as early as next month. So we know you have questions about this, and that's why we're getting you answers right now from Guilford County Schools leaders. Text your questions to 336-379-5775, 336-379-5775. Remember, we can only take your questions through text message. We cannot take your questions if you call in. So let's get right to it. Guilford County Schools Assistant Superintendent Dr. Jamie King, Chief Academic Officer Dr. Whitney Oakley, and Chief Operations Officer Angie Henry are all with us for the next 30 minutes. So we're just going to start with, when can kids be coming back into schools, and what does that look like for Guilford County right now?
That's a great question, and I'll take that one. So our next Board of Education meeting is on September 24th. At this time, our Board of Education will look at health indicators and re-entry planning. The recommended scenario, in conjunction with our public health officials, is that we do a voluntary re-entry for pre-K students on September 29th, for our kindergarten students on October 5th, and pending our Board of Education meeting on September 24th, other grades, our elementary school students and our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students could start phasing in gradually on October the 20th. Right now, we're working to make sure that health and safety protocols are in place, that all of our operational details, including transportation and child nutrition, will be ready to go. But that, again, will be decided at the board meeting on September the 24th.
Gotcha. Dr. Oakley, thank you for taking that question. Already parents are writing in asking about some of those safety measures that you mentioned. Someone says, will there be partitions on the desks, and what about the airflow and ventilations of the schools?
So our desks are going to be spaced 6 feet apart, and students will be wearing a cloth face covering, so there will not be partitions on the desk. Protocols don't require that when we have the social distancing. We've got all the other safety measures in place, though. As I mentioned, we do have desks spaced 6 feet apart. We will have face coverings for all of our students and staff. Our teachers will have face shields that they'll have to wear along with their face coverings if they need to get closer than the 6 feet to students. And then we've got all of the markings in place and the cleaning protocols.
Gotcha. And of course, I know that everyone on the school board and everyone in the school system has likely thought through all of these scenarios, but someone writes in, there have been positive cases in schools within the last few weeks. If students are back and there's a positive case at the school, will the entire school be shut down for deep cleaning, or just part of the building where that student's classroom is? So let's just broaden that out and ask, what happens if there is a positive case at a Guilford County school once students go back?
Sure. So we'll be working with the Guilford County Department of Public Health. If we do have a positive case, and we'll do the appropriate contact tracing, and then we'll close whatever part of the facility needs to be closed for a deep cleaning. And that part of the facility will be closed for 24 hours following the deep cleaning to be sure that we've been able to allow things to disinfect the way they need to be.
And someone else writes in, what about students with more vulnerable immune systems? Specifically, they're asking about Gateway Education Center. Are they going to be required to return to school buildings?
So again, we won't know our date of reopening until our Board of Education meeting on September the 24th. Our public separate schools, including Gateway, will reopen as part of that proposed scenario as early as October 20th. However, schools will work with families on a case-by-case basis to make decisions. We know that some students are medically fragile and that returning to school is not the best choice for them, and we'll have options for remote learning to continue in those cases.
And your virtual academy, the deadline to apply for that for students has been extended until after that decision is made at the next school board meeting, right?
Yes, September 25th, that evening is the deadline to apply. So the full day following that meeting on the 24th.
Gotcha. Good to know. Of course, you mentioned buses as well, Dr. Oakley, when we first started out. That's one of the big talkers because it's hard to social distance when you have kids on a bus. So what are the plans in place for transportation right now?
Sure. So we're planning on transporting students. We are following DHHS guidance, which allows 1 student per seat. On most of our buses, that would allow 24 students to be on the bus along with the bus driver. And so we'll be transporting students to single schools. So each bus will only serve 1 site to be sure that we minimize any multiple schools being impacted by 1 bus. But we've got plans in place, and then we'll have cleaning protocols that we'll be following between each run. So once we deliver 1 load of students, we'll have time to clean the bus before we pick up the next load.
And Dr. King, someone's asking about virtual learning, so I'm interested to hear your take on this. How do you think the past few weeks have gone for GCS?
Yeah, great question. So I think it's been an interesting transition. I think we in teaching and learning have learned a lot. I feel like it has definitely been much better. So I'm also a parent of 3 GCS elementary age students. So I think that we've seen a complete difference from March to June since we've started in August. I think that it's also caught some people off guard in that this has been true school. You know, this is teaching and learning. Teachers are teaching lessons, kids are learning, there's quizzes, assessments. So I think that it's been eye-opening a little bit. I think we've all learned, teachers, students, and educators, in how to really navigate this remote space and how to best provide, educational access to all of our students.
Yeah. And a follow-up question coming in about transportation. Someone asking, do you have enough buses and drivers to make this new plan work?
So certainly we'll be adjusting bell schedules. One, to accommodate the reduced number of students who can be on a bus, but also to be sure that we do have a sufficient number of bus drivers in each run to be able to deliver all of our students.
Gotcha. Someone writes in, if a child is on quarantine because they got the virus, will they be able to then switch over to virtual learning? How will they be able to go to school while they're on that lockdown period?
Yeah, so they would still be able to kind of attend remotely like they're doing now. Students would still be able to get work from their teachers, assignments. We're still kind of navigating through what that looks like once we return to school. They would not necessarily transfer to the virtual academy itself because that's a year-long process. And because of staffing, we can't allow people to go back and forth throughout the school year. People can transfer in or out of the virtual academy at the semester break. So in that January 20th date, people can transfer in or out. But if they just get quarantined, then they would just stay home for those 14 days or 10 days, depending on what their diagnosis is and test results. And then they would just remote learn like we're doing right now during that time.
All right. Well, guys, you're going to stick around, I know, for the next few minutes. That means we need more of your questions. You can continue to text them to 336-379-5775. More answers when we come back.